while I do love building a data story, I can't build a data story when I don't actually know what you're trying to accomplish in the first place. Because the data is only there to support where you're going. It's a microcosm of everything else, right? And yes, it feeds, it's a feedback loop, but at the end of the day, it is not a thing unto itself, right? Like it has to be attached to something else. And that something else is what is the vision of the company? What, as Dave said, what is the top of the mountain? Where are you trying to get to? And then I can assess where are you at based on this data.
In progress.
In progress. Last week, dear Hannah and myself had the chance to be together in person.
We
So
did.
lovely. Always good to see you. We are a fully remote team. Somebody was asking me about this the other day. I was like, I actually don't think any of our team are even in the same city, let alone see each other on a regular basis. We're kind of all over the place, which is beautiful and lovely and amazing in so many ways. We learn a good deal and we can access a bunch of different things and we learn all sorts of great groups and all that. And every once in a while, it's really nice just to get the chance to see each other.
Yeah.
Uh, so I was really happy that you and I got to kind of jointly be on the same client. Even though we didn't spend that much time together, because we were deep in meetings and doing the work, but always good to be in person, Hannah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we don't get to do that very often. I do think that we have an amazing assistant, Lolly, and she
Mhm.
wins this week because she's working from a beach in Brazil.
Yeah,
So talk about good
yeah, she's
remote places to
surfing.
work from.
I talked to her this morning and she said she was going to be surfing over her lunch break and I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna eat a banana, I guess, by
Yeah,
myself in my
yeah.
office. So you won.
Yeah,
You won.
exactly. But no, it's always nice to get together with people who are far away. And today is kind of the same. We get to, at least remotely over the computer, get together with someone who is not in either of our cities either. So yeah. Do you want to
Yeah,
kind of talk a little bit about who we're talking with today, and then I'll read their bio?
100%. Yeah. So as Hannah was alluding to, we are talking to Liz Douglas, who is joining our certified ranks as a five facets certified. We couldn't be more excited about Liz and what she offers. She's in the Chicagoland area. A lot of good stuff going on up there, and she brings a lot to the team. A lot of background in coaching and consulting work. Data nerd, loves all the things that we love to dive into. So we're excited to have this conversation today. We're going to do a similar format to what we have been doing, which is a case study, and then Liz and I will kind of co-riff on it and think together. And again, hopefully you get a lot out of just how to process issues, especially if you're an organization that's experiencing really similar things. It's helpful just to even know, like, how do I think about this problem? What do I need to be paying attention to? What should I be doing? So tell us a little bit more about Liz, Hannah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm excited for this. So Liz helps founder-led businesses turn chaos into order so they can grow without the owner carrying everything. Her work focuses on aligning leadership, improving execution, and using AI to build data stories, a decision engine that tells you, the business owner, what the next best step is for your business. So basically, she helps CEOs build businesses that run better and feel lighter to lead. And all of that is very aligned with what you and I do as well. So let's bring her into the Zoom and we'll keep going. Welcome, Liz.
Hey, Liz.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Good to
We
have
just
you. Good to have you on the pod. Thanks for jumping in.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We
we
were
just spent
just,
a couple minutes talking
no,
about
you go.
you.
No, you go.
No, you go.
We just keep talking over each other.
We just spent a couple minutes talking about you and introducing you to our listeners, but we'll hand it over to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What brought you into the area of business that you're in?
Yeah, so I actually owned several small businesses before I got into mortgage financing years and years ago. Definitely made my fair share of mistakes in those businesses. And then when I decided to get out of mortgage financing, I had always sort of I just love business. I always have. And so I decided that I would go into business consulting and started that about 4 years ago and have been doing it ever since, just helping companies, as I like to say, putting their chaos into order. Of course, that encompasses a lot of things, and we do all of them, whatever they need. But within a framework, and specifically the five facets.
We were just saying, as we came in, we're really excited for you to jump in on the certification process. You kind of
Yeah.
embody all the things that we embody, and think about, right? Like as you said, as a previous business owner, you touch all the thing. Like you touch all the
Mhm.
aspects of a business, and it's being able to see the weave between all of them that really matters. Was
Yep.
there a one of the businesses that you started in a previous life that you
Yeah.
thought like, oh man, this is the one I really, this one I like the most? Or if you could go back and do it, would you do it again?
Yes, I would. I
Yeah.
owned a store online that sold luxury home decor items.
Ooh, I was gonna say you have
But we
fancy plants
manufactured.
and a
We
really
manufactured
cool
all of
lamp,
it.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. We manufactured everything, and so I was your classic like heated garage, 10 employees coming to my house every day, that type of, and it was just a blast, to be completely honest.
Oh yeah, that sounds amazing.
So
That's so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I would totally do it again. In fact, I have moments where I'm like, ooh, like I should maybe I could do that on the side. But yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. That's fun.
Oh, I love that so much. That's awesome. Well,
yeah.
yeah, no, I think that your past is definitely going to lend to this case study that I put together for you guys. So, Liz has not done this before. Dave and I have done a handful of these now at this point into season four, where listeners, I'm going to present to them a fake company based on real companies and the struggle that they are experiencing. And then we're going to hand it over to the experts here to diagnose the problem, help come up with a solution. And Liz, you can treat me like the client. So if you have questions, if you have things that you want to know more about, you can ask me
Yep.
those questions and I will try and answer them to the best of my ability.
Okay. Sounds
Cool.
good.
Ready?
Yep.
All right. Here we go. Okay. So imagine this company, we're going to call them Bright Path Growth. They are about a 25-person marketing agency, and on paper, they are incredibly data driven. They've got dashboards for their ad performance, a CRM tracking their pipeline and their close rates, monthly reporting for clients, internal spreadsheets for utilization and revenue. There's no shortage of data anywhere in the business. But internally, things feel very off. Marketing is saying that campaigns are performing really well. Sales is saying that the leads aren't very good. Delivery is saying clients aren't very happy with the results. And finance is looking at everything and saying that the margins are getting tighter. So there's all this data, but it's all pointing kind of in different directions right now. And what ends up happening is every leadership meeting kind of turns into like a debate. People saying things like, we should double down on ads. That's what the data says. Or the problem is lead quality. Or someone else says, no, the problem is delivery or something like that. So every few weeks, the priorities shift, which causes confusion in the company. Basically, they're not ignoring the data, they're just kind of using a lot of it, and it's not helping. It's not creating clarity, it's just kind of creating confusion. So I think I have a couple of questions to kind of start off with, but I'll kind of leave it there for a second and kind of let both of you react to what you've heard so far.
Yeah, I was about to ask, what does the CEO have to say about this?
Hmm.
Great question. The CEO is usually on the side of sales. So the CEO says like, but
Mhm.
like the quality of our leads is poor. So the CEO is kind of like very much so kind of in the chorus of what sales is saying, which is like, we're not, yes, the campaigns are performing well, sure, but like we're not actually getting the kind of leads that we want.
Okay, Dave, you want to go first?
Go ahead, Liz.
Okay, so I would say that I actually see this all the time, and
Right.
that I'm just thinking of two companies right now that I'm working with. One's a law firm, one's an insurance agency, and same, they have gobs of data. They have every dashboard you could possibly think of. And when I then ask the question, what is the next thing that you need to do? They don't really know what that is. And that kind of translates up from the CEO, right? Like he would tell you or she would tell you that there's lots of reports, Liz, but I don't really know what it tells me to do. And yes, there's a disconnect between the different departments, and the CEO always sides with somebody, right? Like they might be really sales driven, like you're saying, Hannah, or they might be really service driven. But at the end of the day, there's like this fork in the road always of so and so wants to go in this direction, so and so wants to go in this direction, and they just go in circles about what is the actual right decision of what the next step is for the company. And so for me, my favorite thing to do, and I'm in the process actually of building a custom GPT for an ROI for the insurance agency because that's one of their big things. It's not the only thing, but with all of their data, I mean, I would tell you, I can't even read all that data and just know like what's going on. No wonder they don't know what's going on, right? So I've always said that this is a data story, but I've been trying to reframe that, those words because nobody really wants to deal with data unless you just like it, like I do. And so I've sort of recently started calling it a decision engine, right? Like I need something that connects all the pieces from all these reports, and I don't just need another report that connects all the pieces. That's not the end goal. The end goal is for me to have something that actually connects them all and tells me visually. I mean, I just went through with a data analyst for the law firm, and we put in a big dashboard, we built this entire data story, and on the right-hand side, it tells you what to do if you hit these thresholds. So that you're not just looking at data like, okay, it's great that marketing says this, or the CRM says this, or service says this. That's all nice, but does it tell you what you should actually do with those numbers, right? Like, what is the next step given what I'm looking at? So when you can set some thresholds and know what your projections are, for the year you're in, plus what's in the future, then you kind of fill in that middle gap of now I'm connecting everything and I know what these numbers are supposed to be. That way, I then can tell myself or build out a story that says, if it's not this number, what do I do about that? Right? Like, am I supposed to do something? Should I wait for 30 days and see if it gets better? Because maybe I really should. Maybe there's a very cyclical nature to the business, and you don't need to worry if you're off or below the threshold on any random given week, right? But you need
Yeah.
to make a mark or a note that you need to come back and see like where are we at in a month, right? Because if you're still lagging behind in a month, then that actually is an issue because we know what historically has happened in this business and we know what's going to happen in the future and we're going to make decisions based on that. But when the data is just spread across a bunch of reports, like that doesn't tell you what to do, right? And so I personally love to build out that actual decision engine or data story so it does connect and that you do have a solid plan going forward of what needs to be done on a weekly basis.
You said it well in terms of I like using data story, right? There's a lot of analogies here, but the data is only as good as the story that surrounds it, right? Like a number is literally just a number. It doesn't mean anything.
Right.
If I just said 17, cool. I have no idea what that means, right? It's like, yeah, because there's no story that surrounds it. There's no target. There's no decision-making matrix. There's no like, what is this number telling us or teaching us? It's always about the context around the numbers. And so, Hannah, to your point in this case study, they're talking about like qualified quality leads. It's like, well, what's the story for quality lead? Is it a volume-based thing? Like, do we want 100 leads that sound like this, etc.? I start thinking about, okay, well, what's sales' story around what a quality lead is? Like, and does the quality lead then have to match their current sales process, and that's what they're qualifying the lead around? Does marketing say anybody that signs up on the web form is a quality lead because they clicked the link and that's a quality lead? It's like we have to define what we mean by that because it's the
Yep.
story around the number that really matters. So does the team have a definition collectively what that means? And then can we walk backwards and say, okay, does our messaging, does our marketing, does our system, does our approach, does our, sales process, does all of that align around this particular target that we have? And if it does, then great, cool, we're doing a good job. But it sounds like it's not. And so I don't think it's as simple as, do we need the numbers? It's okay, well, how are we defining quality? What does the number actually need to be and what does it mean?
Yeah.
Quick story. People will often say, like, we need leads, we need leads, we need leads. It's like, yeah, cool. You can get 100 leads and then you spend all your time dinging around with, 95 terrible leads. And
Right.
now you have to build systems to address all these leads that are terrible when really five are good, right?
Mhm.
It's like, okay, well, how do we use our data and how do we use our definitions and shared understanding for what these things are to interpret and make decisions that move the business forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just to reiterate that. So it's, yeah, so marketing was saying that campaigns are performing well. Sales is saying, though, that the leads aren't very good. Delivery also is saying that clients aren't happy, unfortunately. And then the finance folks are looking at everything and saying that margins are getting tighter. So yeah, like they're looking at all these numbers, but they're pointing in all these different directions. And I think what I'm hearing from both of you is like, Liz, you're saying like, well, we need to centralize the most important data and then define, what's your decision matrix around it
Hmm.
and what are your key numbers that you're looking for, whether they are, well, we don't want this much of that or we don't want this to go below this. And then Dave putting a story around those numbers, like put all of
Yeah.
that in context of like what do
Hmm.
good look leads look like? What does good delivery look like? What's the margin that we're shooting for? Things like that. So,
It also sounds like they have a core business problem,
mhm.
meaning the core bit, like what do we actually do? So from like the way you just said that, if you think about it, you mentioned finances, you mentioned operations, you mentioned sales, you mentioned marketing, right?
Mhm.
Like, and all four of them essentially are telling a different story about what the core business is. Marketing's not doing it in a way that's bringing qualified leads. Sales feels like those leads aren't qualified. Operations is falling apart because they're not delivering it very well and their margin isn't there and they're financially suffering, right? It's like, well, that's a core business problem, right? Because not all four of those entities really truly understand like what do we actually do and how does it actually benefit the customer and how do we charge for it? And if we understand those, the kind of weave between those departments, then all the rest, everything gets better. The component parts get better when you understand it from the clarity level.
Yeah, I agree, Dave. And I was just thinking that kind of what you said, defining what do we actually do and everybody being aligned on what that is. And I also find that the reason I asked about what does the CEO say about this, Hannah, because a lot of times the CEO is the one saying like, my margins are compressing. But then funny enough, if I ask like, well, how many leads do you need? Like you said, Dave, if somebody says 17, well, it doesn't mean anything, right? If
Right.
I ask how many leads do you need today to be sustainable and profitable 12 months from now, 18 months from now, 24 months from now, they actually can't answer that question. They probably can't, right? Now, I'm not saying there's no one who ever can, but most of the time they don't actually know that. But they do know intuitively. Most CEOs, I would tell you, have a pretty good intuitive sense of where the business is at, but I want proof. That's how I always see it, right? Like, I know that you know that something's wrong and you need to remove that tension. I hear what you're saying. But in order to remove the tension, I have to go look at what actually has been happening in each department and look at all of that data, define all of it, and then say, okay, and can that happen in the future? Because if I can't prove that it's happening, that it's happened in the past or that it's happening right now, who's to say that, I see a lot of companies actually who make, here's their goal as we do in the five facets, right? Like here's where you're at. Here's where you want to go, right? They all have their goals. But then it's like, well, where are you at right now?
Hmm.
Right? I can't get you to where you want to go if I can't define where you're at in the moment. And as we go through that process, it's very common from my perspective that they do know where they want to go, but they can't necessarily tell me aside from like, oh, here's my P&L, where I've actually been, right? They have lots of reports, but they can't define where they've really been in the past and where they're actually at in the moment as a complete story. It's only, it's piecemeal together. And so when you don't really know that, then in my mind, it's like, well, I don't have proof that what your goals are even possible. You're telling me you want to get here. Maybe that's very possible, but a lot of times they overshoot, right? They're saying this is where I want to be. And I'm saying, well, it's not that you couldn't get there, right? But according to all the data that's here, that's not actually going to happen in this calendar year, right? And so then they just set themselves up for this circular failure because the morale is down, we didn't hit our numbers, like, it's all of that. And it's like, well, right, but we didn't base any of what our goals were on any data as to what was feasible in the first place. And that
Hmm.
just, you're setting yourself up for failure at that point.
So Liz, you mentioned something that by asking the question about the CEO, and then it felt like just like a small thing that you said, but I think it's actually relatively profound, which is, yeah, but where's the CEO's focus? Because the truth is, like, the behavior and the
Mhm.
bias of the CEO, whether, to go back to like, well, we have a financial, operational, marketing, and sales problem on this particular one. It's like, well, where's the bias of the CEO? Because most likely that's what's
Mhm.
going to get dealt with first, or that's where the attention's going to go, or that's where the focus is
Yeah.
going to be. And it might ignore a whole other part of the story. And so you're really highlighting, in my mind, you're really highlighting the relationship between the behavior of the leader or the leadership team and how that then trickles down
Yep.
into the organization. I mean, that's why we talk explicitly all the time about systems and behavior, because it's always both. It is always both. I can
Yep.
tell you, and Hannah will tell you in our organization, I totally have a bias towards the sales and marketing side. 100%, right? 100%. And it's good that I do, because she totally has a bias towards the operational side, and there's a balance there, and it's good. And it's important for us to know that and understand that and have deference for each other and
Right.
not try to compete with each other in that, but to coalesce around those things. But the
Yep.
behavior side of it totally, and the bias side of it totally matters in terms of how this situation gets dealt with.
Yep.
100%.
Yeah, that's very true, Dave. As you were talking, I was thinking about a couple of different CEOs that I'm working with right now where, one of them super, super biased towards intake, right? That's everything to him, right? Like, I'm not buying leads if my intake department isn't getting, every last phone call, the highest conversion rate possible. And do I disagree? No. But then I have another CEO whose big, big thing is more activity, right? Like you have to hit these numbers, like overall, right? Like just you have to make this many outbound touches, right? And it's from the sales perspective. And it's not that either one of those is a wrong perspective, but it is definitely relevant for them to be aware of their own bias and that the other side of that is not necessarily wrong, right? Like there's somebody on the other side saying, yeah, but the service is like a huge thing because that drives referrals after the fact, right? You can't just completely ignore that and say, yeah, but my intake department, right? Yes, your intake department needs to be good. And yes, in the other scenario, yes, you do need to make all of your outbound calls and touches, but at the end of the day, there are other pieces to this business that actually drive those sales. That's not the only thing. Yes, we can work on those things, but in my mind, it kind of does need to be done as a whole, not just as a piece, right? There's more to it than just one department.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do leadership teams, I mean, because we've seen it so often, why do they, I would say waste time debating data rather than like figuring out how to make united decisions? Like, why does that happen?
I think, as we've talked about, Hannah, there's three conversations happening at all times in an organization. And there's the clarity conversation, there's the alignment conversation, there's the execution conversation. Clarity is, where are we going? Right? Like, what's the end? What's the target? What's the vision? What's it all for? Right? Alignment is, how do we do it? And execution is, what's actually happening and what are we doing? I think a lot of organizations have speaking of bias from a personality perspective in an organization, they have a bias in one, maybe two of those categories. We were just with a client not that long ago that is very, very, very execution focused. And they're very good and they get a bunch of stuff done, but it is a little bit like dogs chasing their tails at times of like, yeah, but why? Like, why are we doing all this activity? Why are we measuring out? Why am I being held to account on all this stuff? Because they haven't really paid attention to the clarity layer. So, leadership teams, quote unquote, like wasting time, talking about data. It's like, well, it's not necessarily a waste of time if it's tied to the vision, and tied to where you want to go, and tied to actually achieving the thing, and it's connected to a strategy. And if you have all three of those layers present in a data review, and you have all three of those layers present in, hey, is sales and marketing working well together? Is operations working well together? Is finance working well together? Well, are they working together in their individual departments for their particular strategy and their particular execution challenges? Or are they working together for the clarity layer? And the clarity layer is the thing I want them all working towards all the time, always. And then that should inform what we do from a strategy, and that should inform what we do from a technical perspective. So data is just a piece of the puzzle.
Hmm.
And when it gets out of balance, they're over indexing, is maybe the way I say it. Liz, kind of what I heard you saying is like they're over indexing on one thing when it
Hmm.
is a complex system.
Yep. So I'm basically going to say the same thing in different words
Yay.
because I was going to say that every single person who's on that leadership team has their own perspective, their own unique personality, and they all have their unique bias that just comes with them in the same way that Dave, you're going to think one thing about a set of data, I'm going to think a different thing, and Hannah, you're going to think something else. And so there does have to be clarity and alignment because that is what drives the story being this is the story that we're actually going to follow, right? Like this is how we're going to make decisions. And it is a full picture, not just Dave's picture, not just Hannah's picture, not just my picture, but all of the pictures combined. And if they're all pointing towards one thing, which is the clarity of why we're here and what we do, it kind of makes the decision for you, if that makes sense. So then there's no like, well, Dave wants to do this, but I'm really vehemently against that. Well, it's not necessarily up to either one of us. It's up to what's the vision of the company? Like, where are we supposed to be going? And does this get us closer? So, yeah, 100% agreed.
Yeah. I think my last question here would be probably a two-parter is so now
Ooh.
having heard everything you've heard about Bright Path. Oh
Growth.
no, I forgot my own fake company. Bright Path Growth. Now knowing what you know about Bright Path Growth, how would you start helping them with this problem? What would you tell them to do? How would you walk them through it? And also, how would you help them understand that if they keep going the way they're going, what's going to happen kind of thing?
Honestly, I would start with the front end of what we do in the five facets, quite frankly. Like I think they don't necessarily have a sense of the clarity layer. That feels like the layer that's missing for me in this organization. It seems like they can execute. The campaign is working. We've got sales team, we've got operations, we've got finance. It's just not working together to do a thing, right? So they don't necessarily have a sense of what is the top of the mountain? Where are we going? What are we trying to accomplish here as an entity, as a collective? And in that, you get vision, core business, core strategy components, right? Like you're really clarifying, like, what are we fundamentally across all five facets of the business? And we don't necessarily look at the data in that context. So, where are we going and where are we? And those two movements for that organization in particular, I think would unlock their potential. It would unlock all the things that they're talking about if the team coalesced around those two things. And then it would inform action. It would inform the things that they need to do. I don't hear anything in your case study, and maybe it's embedded down the line a little bit about like they don't like each other, they don't want to work well together, they have underperformers. Like it's not a cultural problem as much as it is a clarity problem in my mind.
It's easy when you're talking about data to just kind of dive into like, oh, the data, like you give me a whole bunch of reports, every dashboard you have, give me all the stats. Let's put these together, right? But then that brings me right back around to, okay, great, but hold on a second. I have to go back to the beginning. Like Dave said, it's not just one piece, right? I have to start at the beginning and say, before I start diving into all these reports, I have to know why are you here in the first place, right? Like, what are you doing? Where are you trying to get to? And then I can look at where you're at and break down all of the data because while I do love building a data story, I can't build a data story when I don't actually know what you're trying to accomplish in the first place. Because the data is only there to support where you're going. It's not there just as it's a microcosm of everything else, right? And yes, it feeds, it's a feedback loop, but at the end of the day, it is not thing unto itself, right? Like it has to be attached to something else. And that something else is what is the vision of the company? What, as Dave said, what is the top of the mountain? Where are you trying to get to? And then I can assess where are you at based on this data and what needs to happen, what has happened historically, and what needs to happen in the future on those numbers to get you where you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just because we've already seen this from other clients and to kind of wrap this out is like if there are any companies out there who are struggling with uniting their data with a common vision or addressing their data in a comprehensive way through the vision. If you don't address it, then it will continue to breed this kind of division amongst the different data sets slash different departments. And that sucks. And that usually the symptoms of that, of people kind of looking at just their sector and, well, why isn't their data supporting my data? That's generally what I feel like brings people to reach out to consultants, is like, I'm having a people problem now. Well, you started out having a data division problem, and then that became a people problem.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a great point, Hannah. Something you said earlier that I forgot about, that I haven't said anything about, and that is then it sort of turns into like there's always this shifting goal. The bar, they're always moving the goalpost.
yeah.
And it's because, a lot of times I see one department's told, like, okay, we just looked at the revenue numbers and this, that, and the other, and so we're going to focus on this. So we go into this particular department, blow everything off and start fresh. Here's all the things we want you to track, right? And then a few months later, you find a different set of numbers that are, relevant to a different department, and you don't like those, and so you want to fix those. And so you fix them, or so you think, right? And then what that does though over time is that it then shifts back to maybe the department that you've already started fresh with. And when you get back to that department, it's like, okay, well, now we want you to do this. And so the person leading that department feels like, well, you said 3 months ago you wanted me to focus on this over here, and I did that, and you're still not happy, right? And at the end of the day, it's because it's not cohesive, right? There's no connection, or as you said, you used a great word, Hannah, comprehensive, right? It's not a comprehensive data story that tells us what we're doing. And so, yeah, you just kind of jump from place to place to place and from problem to problem to problem, trying to put out fires. But it's like those trick candles, right? They just keep coming back alive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode, Liz, and
Yeah,
offering your
thank you,
insight
Liz.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
to Bright Path Growth, something like that. We would love for you to share with our listeners, where can they connect with you, and if there's anything coming up that you want to share.
Yeah, so as Dave mentioned earlier, we're going through the five facets training. I love it. I've been doing basically the same thing for the last 4 years. You can find me at EdenGrowthConsulting.com. Yeah, I'm just excited about partnering with you guys and just helping companies. I just genuinely, like I said earlier, I just love business. I can't get away from it no matter what I do.
Right.
And just being able to really help a company thrive. And I think also knowing what it feels like to own a company and have the stress and the tension of not being able to know what are my next steps, what decisions should
Yeah.
I be making. That's a heavy burden to carry all the time. And so being able to relieve that for people and help them to be able to see clearly and with clarity where I'm going and what my next steps are is just, it's great fulfillment for me. I love it. And so, yeah. So thank you.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. I mean, as somebody who's run multiple businesses, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing worse than sitting at the top, excuse me, and thinking it's one thing, or being concerned about like, yeah, but how do I make sense of all this like soup that I'm
Yeah.
swimming in, right? Like, how do I make sense of all of it? Pretty easy to get overwhelmed by the volume of things that come your direction and the volume of challenges or the complexity of the challenges. It's
Yeah.
easy to get wrapped up in that. I think that was well said. They can also find you on LinkedIn, right, Liz?
Yes, yes, they
Yeah,
can.
somewhere there maybe.
Yeah, I think I'm under Liz Douglas in there, although my real name is Elizabeth with an S. So I think it'll come up either way, actually.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll put the link
We'll put
to
links to
Liz, to your LinkedIn and your website in the show notes, so listeners check those out.
it.
And yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think we hit on something that I have seen several businesses struggle with, where, okay, I'm looking at numbers, I'm data driven, aren't I? But what are you driving toward has not
Yeah,
been
yeah.
clarified.
It's okay to drive the data bus if that's the vehicle you need to be driving at that particular time. I think Liz said it well in the fact that like data is truly in service of, right? It is not the tip of the spear. It is in service of wherever it is that you're going, right? It's evidence that it's working or not working, or it's indicators of whether whatever you're trying to do is working or not. So it is essentially like whatever the numbers are, almost always reactive, right? Like you set a target and then it's, are we on track or not? I thought that was really helpful. But as somebody who's owned a lot of businesses, I think a point that Liz brought up that was really good is that behavioral component. Like, what is the bias? What is the focus? Where does the leadership team tend to spend their time, attention, or conversation, and or just the CEO and or just the owner? Like, whoever has the most sway at the top has a strong ability from a behavioral perspective to shift the behavior and the focus of everybody else in the organization. And it's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just a really good thing to be aware of. And what is the impact of that? So I thought that was a fabulous point.
No, this one was really fun. I always love talking to her about this. And, I'm learning more and more about data and analyzing it and letting it tell you a story and myself. So I was excited to jump into this. But listeners, thank you so much for checking out another episode. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on Business Velocity. Today's insights are just the beginning of enhancing your business's momentum. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also explore our framework at theevolveddifference.com. And remember, the time is now to take these strategies and apply your learning and achieve velocity. See you next time.